I want to say up front that I'm not the kind of person who posts things like this. I have a doctorate in structural engineering from UT Austin. I've spent 11 years designing highway overpasses for TxDOT. I believe in load calculations, soil density reports, and the fundamental predictability of concrete under stress. I am not a superstitious person. I don't listen to podcasts about cryptids. I don't own crystals. The last horror movie I watched was in a theater in 2014, and I fell asleep before the second act. I'm telling you this because what I'm about to describe is going to sound like I've lost my mind, and I need you to understand the kind of person I was before March of this year, because I am not that person anymore, not entirely. And the reason is a rest stop on Interstate 10 between Fort Stockton and Van Horn that you have almost certainly driven past without noticing, because it was designed very carefully so that you would. My name is Caroline Ávila. I'm 38. I live in a 3-bedroom house in Pflugerville with my daughter, who is 9, and my mother, who is 71 and has early-stage vascular dementia. My ex-husband lives in Frisco with a woman who sells insurance, and he sends his child support payments roughly 60% of the time. I drive a 2021 Subaru Outback with 94,000 miles on it. The check engine light has been on since January. I can't afford to fix it. I mention these things because they matter. They're the reason I was on that road at all. In February, TxDOT's Odessa District Office flagged an issue with a rest stop facility on I-10 westbound, mile marker 218. The structure was a standard Type 3 rest area. Restrooms, covered picnic pavilion, pet walk area, vending machines, and a parking lot designed for mixed use. Passenger vehicles on the south side, commercial trucks on the north side. It was built in 1987 and had gone through 2 renovation cycles, the most recent in 2009. On paper, it was unremarkable. The flag was structural. Unusual subsidence patterns in the truck parking apron. The concrete was cracking in ways that didn't match the soil reports. Not settling uniformly, which you'd expect from the expansive clay out there, but directionally. The cracks were all propagating east to west, every single one, as if the ground under the lot were being pulled in one direction slowly, over years. My supervisor, Gerald, called it a drainage issue, probably an underground water channel nobody mapped in '86 when they did the original survey. West Texas is full of hidden hydrology. Old spring systems, collapsed solution cavities in the limestone. He wanted me to drive out, do a visual assessment, pull the original construction documents from the district office, and write a recommendation. Resurface, reinforce, or demolish and rebuild. 3 options. Clean engineering problem. I said I'd go. The truth is, I volunteered. My mother had been having a bad week. She'd called the police twice because she didn't recognize the home health aide, and Louisa, my daughter, had started wetting the bed again because the yelling scared her. I needed 48 hours away. I'm not proud of that. But it's true. I left Pflugerville at 4 in the morning on a Tuesday. I dropped Louisa at school early. They have a breakfast program, and I left my mother with Senora Dominguez from next door, who is a saint and will not accept payment. I drove west on 290, picked up I-10 past Junction, and watched the world flatten and empty in that way that only West Texas can accomplish. By noon, the land was so open and pale it looked like someone had erased everything and forgotten to draw it back in. I reached the Odessa District Office by 2, picked up the original construction files. 3 bankers' boxes of blueprints, soil reports, inspection logs, and got a key card for the rest stop's maintenance access points. The district engineer, a guy named Felix Munoz, who'd been there for 30 years, walked me to my car. He stopped me at the door. "You going out there tonight?" "Probably," I said. "I want to see it in different light conditions, photograph the crack patterns." Felix looked at me for a moment with an expression I interpreted, at the time,
as the particular condescension that older male engineers reserve for younger female engineers who they think are being overly thorough. I was wrong about what that expression meant. I know that now. "Park on the south side," he said. "Passenger side. Don't use the truck lot." I need to assess the truck lot. That's the whole point. Assess it on foot during the day, but don't park there. And if you see trucks in the lot at night, don't go near them. Felix. There's a binder in the maintenance closet. Gray binder, top shelf. Read it before you do anything after sundown. I almost laughed. I thought he was being dramatic. A peculiar old-timer with an attachment to protocol. Every district office has one. They know where every buried cable is, and they think the new engineers are reckless. "Is this about liability?" I asked. "Because I have the standard site visit insurance through—" "Read the binder, Caroline." He went back inside. I noticed he didn't watch me pull away. He just walked through the glass doors without looking back, like he'd said what he needed to say, and the rest wasn't his responsibility anymore. I drove to the rest stop. It took about 90 minutes west on I-10 from Odessa, past Monahan's and the old sand hills, past Fort Stockton where I stopped for gas and a sandwich I didn't eat. The land out there is a specific kind of emptiness. It's not the romantic emptiness of Montana or the eerie emptiness of the Dakotas. West Texas emptiness is geological. It feels like the earth is showing you its bare skull. The Permian Basin stretches beneath you, millions of years of compressed seabed turned to stone, and the surface is just a thin, sunburned skin pulled tight over something very old and very patient. Mile marker 218. I almost missed it even though I was looking for it. The rest stop sat on the north side of the interstate, set back about 300 yards from the travel lanes. Standard Texas Department of Transportation signage. Blue rest area signs at 2 miles and 1 mile. But the signage was undersized. I noticed this as a professional detail before I noticed it as anything else. The signs were correct, regulation compliant, but they used the minimum allowable dimensions. At highway speed, you'd register them just barely. Most drivers would blow past. I pulled off and followed the entrance road. It curved north and looped west, which was unusual. Most rest stop access roads are directed a gentle curve off the deceleration lane, then a straight shot to the lot. This one took you on a wide, almost scenic arc that added maybe 45 seconds to the approach. It also meant that by the time you reached the parking lot, you'd turned enough that you'd lost your spatial orientation relative to the highway. You couldn't tell intuitively which direction was which. The parking lot was large, too large actually for a rest stop that remote. The passenger vehicle area on the south side had room for maybe 60 cars. The truck lot on the north side could accommodate 30 rigs. At 3 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, there were 0 vehicles present. I parked on the south side. Not because Felix told me to, but because that's where the maintenance building and restrooms were. I got out. The wind hit me immediately. Not strong, just constant, dry, and persistent coming from the west. It carried a faint mineral smell, like hot limestone. The facility was clean, surprisingly clean actually. Most rest stops in that stretch of I-10 are at various stages of neglect. The budget doesn't stretch. But this one looked maintained. The restrooms were functional. The vending machines were stocked. The covered picnic pavilion had intact tables and benches, no graffiti. The pet walk area was mowed. I walked the truck lot. This was what I was here for. The cracking was immediately visible and immediately wrong. I've looked at thousands of concrete pads in my career. Concrete cracks, that's what it does. It shrinks as it cures. It expands and contracts with temperature. It responds to the substrate beneath it. But it cracks predictably. You can model it. You can anticipate the pattern based on pore dimensions, mix design, rebar placement, and soil characteristics.
That's literally my job. These cracks didn't follow any model I'd ever seen. They were linear, running east to west, not branching, not propagating in the typical alligator pattern you see with base failure, clean lines, almost deliberate, like something had drawn them with a straight edge. And they were deep. I knelt down and shone my phone flashlight into one. The crack was narrow at the surface, maybe a quarter inch, but it went down further than my light could reach. Standard concrete pad is 8 inches thick, over compacted base. This crack appeared to go through the full depth and into whatever was below. I took photographs. I took measurements. I pulled out the construction documents and cross-referenced the original pour specifications. The concrete had been spec'd as 4,000 pounds per square inch, standard for heavy-use pavement. The rebar was number 5 at 12-inch centers, also standard. Everything about the design was normal. Everything about the result was not. I spent 2 hours on the lot. I walked every crack. They were all oriented the same way, east to west, 43 of them, roughly parallel, spaced between 18 inches and 3 feet apart. They covered the eastern 2/3 of the truck lot. The western third was uncracked. As the sun got lower, I noticed something else. The cracks weren't uniformly wide along their length. They were wider on their eastern ends and narrower on their western ends, as if the concrete were being pulled apart from the east side, as if something to the east were exerting a slow, lateral tension on the entire pad. I made a note to check for nearby geological faults. The area isn't on any major fault system, but there are minor ones throughout the Permian Basin related to oil and gas extraction. Could be induced seismicity. Could be solution collapse in the underlying limestone. There were rational explanations. I went back to my car to get the banker's boxes and start reading through the original site survey. The sun was setting. West Texas sunsets are absurd. The whole sky turns the color of a healing bruise. And I watched it from the hood of my car while I ate a bag of peanuts and drank a warm Coke from the vending machine. Then I went to find the binder. The maintenance closet was at the back of the restroom building, accessed by a heavy steel door with a keycard reader. My card worked. Inside was a standard utility room. Water heater, electrical panel, cleaning supplies, a mop sink, fluorescent light, buzzing faintly. The gray binder was on the top shelf, exactly where Felix said it would be. It was a standard 3-ring binder, the kind you can buy at any office supply store. The cover was unlabeled. The spine had a strip of masking tape with a handwritten number, 218-NP. I opened it. The first page was typed, not printed from a computer. Typed, on a typewriter, with the uneven letter spacing and occasional ink smudge of a manual machine. It was dated November 14th, 1987. 3 days after the rest stop's construction completion date, according to the documents I'd already reviewed. It read, Rest Area 218, Nighttime Parking Protocol. Prepared by the Office of the District Engineer, Odessa. For maintenance personnel and authorized staff only. This document supplements standard TxDOT Rest Area Operations Protocol and addresses site-specific conditions at Rest Area 218, I-10 westbound, mile marker 218, Pecos County, Texas. Compliance is mandatory for all personnel assigned to or visiting this facility between sunset and sunrise. 1. Commercial vehicles parked in the truck lot between sunset and sunrise must face west. Any vehicle found facing east must be reported to the district engineer's office immediately. Do not approach the vehicle. Do not attempt to contact the driver. Do not knock on the cab. Note the time, the truck's license plate if visible, and the parking position number. Report by radio from the maintenance building. Do not use a personal phone from the lot itself. 2. The truck lot lights operate on an automatic timer. They will shut off at 2:47 a.m. and reactivate at 2:53 a.m. This is not a malfunction. Do not attempt to repair, override, or manually restart the lights during this interval. Remain inside the maintenance building or the restroom structure. Do not be in the truck lot or in your vehicle during this window. 3. If you hear what sounds like a diesel engine idling in the truck lot between 2:47 and 2:53 a.m. but no commercial vehicles were present at sunset, do not investigate. The sound is not mechanical in origin. 4. The easternmost row of parking positions in the truck lot, positions 1 through 8, is permanently closed. These positions are marked with faded paint and may appear to be standard parking spaces. They are not. No vehicle should occupy these positions at any time. If you observe a vehicle in positions 1 to 8, see Protocol 1. 5. The concrete cracks in the truck lot are being monitored. Do not fill, seal, or repair them. Do not place any material into the cracks. Do not drop objects into the cracks. If you observe that a crack has widened to more than 1 inch at any point along its length, measure the widest point and report it immediately to the district engineer's office. Include the date, time, ambient temperature, and whether the measurement was taken during daylight or darkness. Cracks widen faster at night. This is expected. 6. The water fountain near the covered picnic pavilion occasionally produces water that smells strongly of sulfur. This occurs exclusively after midnight and exclusively when commercial vehicles are parked in the lot. Do not drink from the fountain during these conditions. The sulfur smell will dissipate by dawn. 7. You may occasionally observe a vehicle, specifically a flatbed truck, dark in color, no visible DOT markings, no license plate, with a covered load, parked in the closed positions. This vehicle has been observed at the facility since before construction. It predates the rest area. Do not interact with it. It has never moved during direct observation and has only ever been observed between 2:47 and 2:53 a.m. After 2:53, it will not be present. Confirm its absence before resuming duties. 8. Personnel who spend more than 3 consecutive nights at the facility may begin to experience a persistent sense that the lot is tilted, that the eastern side is lower than the western side, as if on a slope. Surveyed elevation data confirms the lot is level to within 0.3 inches across its full width. The sensation is not real. However, if you begin to feel physically pulled toward the eastern side of the lot, end your shift immediately and do not return for a minimum of 72 hours. Notify the district engineer. 9. The rest area is open to the public 24 hours. You cannot prevent civilians from using the facility. If a civilian parks in the truck lot facing east, you are not authorized to instruct them to move. You may suggest an alternate parking space on the south lot by telling them the truck lot is reserved for commercial vehicles, which is true. If they decline, note their vehicle and position and monitor from the maintenance building. 10. If a civilian or commercial driver asks you why all the trucks face west, the approved response is, truckers don't like the sunrise in their windshield when they're trying to sleep. This is a plausible explanation. Do not elaborate. Do not reference this document. Do not discuss site-specific conditions with any non-authorized person. 11. The land east of the truck lot. Beyond the facility perimeter fence, extending toward the low ridgeline approximately 1.2 miles distant, is not TxDOT property. It is not federal land. It is not private land with a registered owner. It appears in no current county, state, or federal land record. Survey markers placed at the perimeter fence have been found moved eastward by between 4 and 11 inches every year since 1987. Do not cross the perimeter fence for any reason. I read the binder standing up in that fluorescent closet, and when I finished, I stood there for a long time looking at the wall. Then I read it again. My training told me this was an elaborate practical joke, something the old district guys cooked up to scare new employees in the way fraternities haze pledges. Rule 7, a ghost truck. Rule 3, a phantom diesel engine. It was almost campy. Almost. But Rule 5 stopped me. Rule 5 was about the cracks. Do not fill, seal, or repair them. I was here specifically because those cracks had been flagged as a structural deficiency requiring repair. The district office had issued a work order. Gerald had approved my site visit. The system had sent me here to fix something that this binder, sitting in the maintenance closet since 1987, said explicitly not to fix. That wasn't a prank. That was a conflict in the documentation. And in my world, conflicts in the documentation are how bridges fall down. I photographed every page of the binder. Then I put it back on the shelf and walked outside. It was full dark. The stars in West Texas are brutal. There's no light pollution for 100 miles in any direction. And the sky doesn't look beautiful, so much as it looks heavy, like the weight of all those stars is pressing down on the thin skin of the land. The truck lot lights were on, casting that flat sodium vapor orange over the empty concrete. The cracks threw faint shadows. No trucks, no vehicles at all except mine, parked on the south side where it belonged. I stood at the edge of the truck lot, on the western end, and looked east. Beyond the perimeter fence there was nothing. Flat scrubland, creosote bush and caliche. The low ridge Felix's binder mentioned was invisible in the dark. But I want to be precise about what I mean by nothing because I've stood in empty places at night before. And this was different. Empty land at night usually has texture. You can sense the terrain, hear insects, see the slightly different darkness of vegetation against soil against sky. This was a smooth nothing, like the land east of the fence had been sanded flat, like it had no features at all. The wind was still coming from the west, but right at the perimeter fence, I could feel a second current, very faint, moving east, as if something on the other side were inhaling. I went back to my car, locked the doors, and called my daughter. She told me about a book she was reading at school. I told her I loved her. Then I called my mother's cell, and Senora Dominguez answered and said my mother was asleep and had had a good day. I sat in my car and did something I hadn't done since graduate school. I cried. Not because I was frightened, because I was exhausted and alone, and 300 miles from my daughter in a place that felt like the edge of something I didn't have a word for. I drove to the Comfort Inn in Fort Stockton. I did not stay at the rest stop that night. The next morning, I went to the Pecos County Courthouse. This is what engineers do when the documents don't agree. We go to the source records. I wanted the original land survey for the rest stop parcel, the environmental assessment, and the construction permits from 1986 to 87. If there was a geological anomaly under that truck lot, a fault, a void, a collapsed cavern, it would be in the survey. The county clerk was a woman named Dolores who had been in that office since the Reagan administration and had the filing system memorized because the digital conversion, she told me, was a catastrophe perpetrated by people who've never touched a plat book. I liked her immediately. I gave her the parcel number. She went into the back and came out 15 minutes later with a thin folder. That's it, I said. Standard rest area parcels generate hundreds of pages of documentation. That's what we've got. The folder contained the deed transfer from the original landowner, a family called Hargrove, to the state of Texas dated June 1986. It contained a single-page environmental assessment marked "No significant findings," and it contained the survey plat. I unfolded the plat on the counter, and Dolores held down the corners for me. The survey covered the rest stop parcel and the surrounding land to a distance of 1 mile in every direction,
standard practice. You survey beyond your build footprint to understand the context. South, west, and north of the parcel, the plat was dense with information. Elevation contours, vegetation notes, soil classifications, existing utility easements, drainage patterns. Normal. East of the parcel, the survey stopped at the perimeter line. Not ended. Stopped. The contour lines approached the eastern boundary and simply terminated. No elevations were recorded beyond the fence line, no soil notes, no drainage. The surveyor had drawn the eastern boundary of the parcel in heavy black ink, much heavier than any other line on the plat, and had written in small, careful handwriting along the outside of that line. Not surveyed. Landowner denied access. Dolores, I said, who owns the land east of this parcel? She looked at the plat, looked at me. Nobody. It has to be somebody's. Every piece of land in Texas is either private, state, or federal. You'd think so, wouldn't you? She went back into the records room. I heard file drawers opening and closing. She was gone a long time. When she came back, she had a single sheet of paper. A printout from the county's GIS system showing parcel boundaries overlaid on satellite imagery. The rest stop parcel was outlined in blue, surrounding parcels. All large ranch tracts were outlined in green. To the east of the rest stop, stretching from the perimeter fence to the ridgeline and beyond, was a polygon outlined in red. Inside the polygon, where the owner's name and parcel number should have been, the field was blank. It's been like that since we digitized, Dolores said. I've sent 3 correction requests to the state land office. They keep closing the tickets. What was there before? In the paper records? Same thing. Blank. Goes back to the original county survey in 1903. Every surrounding parcel has a clear chain of title. That one's just not in the record. I asked if the Hargrove family was still in the area. Dolores gave me a look that contained about 40 years of small county knowledge and said, "The last Hargrove left in '88, right after they sold that strip to TxDOT. Whole family, gone overnight, left cattle in the field." I thanked her. I went to the parking lot and sat in my car and stared at the photographs of the binder on my phone. It is not federal land. It is not private land with a registered owner. It appears in no current county, state, or federal land record. The binder was right. I was holding proof. I should have written my report. Subsidence of unknown origin. Recommend further geotechnical investigation. Here's my invoice. That's what a rational person does. That's what the old Caroline, the Caroline who existed before this week, would have done. Instead, I drove back to rest area 218. It was 11 a.m., bright, clear, 68 degrees. The wind was moderate from the west. There were 2 passenger cars on the south lot, and a minivan with Kansas plates. A family was using the picnic pavilion. Mom, Dad, 2 kids eating Subway sandwiches. Normal. The truck lot was empty. I walked the truck lot again, measured the cracks again. This time, I brought a digital level. The lot was flat. The level confirmed it, but standing on the eastern third of the lot, my body insisted I was on a slope. My vestibular system, the balance organs in my inner ear, which I know about because my mother's neurologist explained them to me, was telling me the ground tilted east, not steeply, maybe 2 or 3 degrees. Enough that I had to consciously correct my posture. The sensation is not real. Rule 8. I walked to the perimeter fence. It was a standard 4-foot chain link with a single strand of barbed wire on top. TxDOT property boundary markers. Orange-capped rebar stakes were set at intervals along the fence line. I looked down at the nearest stake. The stake was 11 inches east of the fence. Not the fence had moved west of the stake,
I could see the original post holes, the concrete footings. The fence was where it had been built in 1987. The stake, a solid piece of rebar driven into the ground and capped with a survey marker, had moved through the soil toward the east. 11 inches in 39 years. I got down on my hands and knees and looked at the ground around the stake. The soil was undisturbed. No sign of excavation. No sign anyone had pulled it up and replanted it. The caliche surface was intact, sun-baked, continuous. The stake had moved through the ground the way a splinter works its way through skin. I have no engineering explanation for this. I have no explanation of any kind. I stood up. I looked east, over the fence toward the ridgeline. In daylight, the land beyond the fence looked normal. Scrubland, same as everywhere else. Creosote, prickly pear, bare caliche flats. But I noticed that the vegetation was regular, not random the way desert scrub normally grows, competing for water in chaotic patterns. The bushes were evenly spaced, roughly 8 feet apart, in rows, east to west rows, like parking spaces. I want to stop here and tell you about something that has nothing to do with engineering or geology or surveying, because I think it matters. When my mother first started losing her memory, before we had the diagnosis, she would stand at the kitchen window of my house and look east toward the road and say, "There's someone out there who needs to come in." I would look and see nothing, an empty street, the neighbor's fence, a mailbox. She would stand there for 10 or 15 minutes, perfectly still, and then she would turn away and go back to whatever she'd been doing, and she wouldn't remember having stood there at all. Her neurologist told me this was a common feature of her condition, a misfiring in the brain's pattern recognition system that creates a sense of presence where there is none. The brain is a prediction machine, he said. When it starts to degrade, it predicts things that aren't there. It fills in blanks with phantoms. It insists on meaning in empty space. I thought about that a lot, standing at the fence. I wondered if what I was experiencing, the tilted ground, the moved stakes, the too regular vegetation, was my own pattern recognition system misfiring under stress. I was tired. I was lonely. I was 300 miles from my child. The brain under those conditions is not reliable. But I'm an engineer, and engineers don't just trust their senses, they measure. And the measurements were wrong too. That evening I did something that the binder didn't explicitly prohibit, but that I knew instinctively it would have if its author had imagined someone like me would come along. I set up monitoring equipment. I had a laser distance meter, a digital inclinometer, and a small seismograph that TxDOT uses for vibration monitoring near construction sites. I placed the seismograph at the center of the truck lot. I set the inclinometer on the concrete near the eastern edge. I positioned the laser meter to measure the width of the widest crack at its widest point, 0.87 inches at 5:30 p.m. Then I went to the maintenance building, set my phone alarm for 2:40 a.m. and waited. I should tell you about the trucks. They started arriving around 8 p.m. I watched from the maintenance building's small window. A Peterbilt with a refrigerated trailer, a Kenworth pulling a flatbed with steel beams, a Freightliner with a dry van. They pulled into the truck lot one at a time, at intervals of 20 or 30 minutes, and every single one of them backed into a space facing west. Not most of them, all of them. I'm not a trucker, but I know that commercial drivers have preferences about how they park, and those preferences vary. Some drivers back in, some pull through, some angle. The uniformity here was conspicuous. These drivers, who showed no sign of knowing each other, who arrived separately from both directions on I-10, were all doing exactly the same thing. By midnight, there were 11 trucks in the lot, all facing west. Positions 1 through 8, the closed row on the eastern edge, remained empty. The drivers were in their cabs. I could see the faint blue glow of phones and tablets through some of the windshields, the warm light of sleeper compartment windows in others. Normal. People settling in for the night. One thing was not normal. None of them had turned off their engines. Every truck was idling. 11 diesel engines running at low RPM, filling the lot with a vibration I could feel through the concrete floor of the maintenance building. I thought about going out and talking to one of the drivers, asking them why they all faced west, asking if they knew about the binder, the rules, the cracks. But Rule 9 was clear. I wasn't supposed to discuss site-specific conditions, and something deeper than protocol stopped me. The lot, seen through the small window, lit by sodium vapor, filled with idling trucks all aimed the same direction. It looked organized. It looked like a formation, like the trucks were soldiers lined up to face something, and the something was behind them, to the east, and they had all, unanimously, chosen to turn their backs to it rather than look at it. At 12:15, I checked the water fountain near the picnic pavilion. The water smelled violently of sulfur, like rotten eggs concentrated to a point of almost physical force. I gagged and stepped back. Rule 6, confirmed. At 1:30, I checked my instruments remotely from the maintenance building using my laptop. The seismograph was picking up a persistent low-frequency vibration, not from the idling trucks. Those registered as a higher frequency hum. This was below that. Deep, rhythmic. Approximately 0.3 hertz, one pulse every 3 seconds. Coming from below the lot, from the east side, like a heartbeat in the bedrock. The inclinometer read 0.0 degrees at 5:30 p.m. It now read 1.7 degrees, tilting east. The concrete was level. I had confirmed this with surveying equipment that afternoon. The inclinometer was sitting on that same concrete, and it was registering a tilt that did not exist. Unless the tilt was real, and it only manifested at night, and by morning the lot returned to level, which was not possible. Concrete doesn't flex. Concrete doesn't breathe. The crack width had increased from 0.87 inches to 0.95 inches. Cracks widen faster at night. This is expected. My alarm went off at 2:40 a.m. I silenced it and stood at the window. 2:43. The trucks were still idling. The lot was still lit. 2:45. A driver climbed out of the Kenworth, the one with the steel beams, and walked quickly to the restroom building. I heard the door open and close on the far side. Fast, purposeful. He didn't look around. He didn't look east. 2:46. He came out, walked back to his truck, got in, closed the door. 2:47. The lights went out. Not flickered, not dimmed. They went out the way a candle goes out when you pinch the wick. Total instant darkness. The only light in the world was the distant orange thread of I-10 and the small green glow of my instrument readouts on my laptop screen. The idling engines were still running. All 11 of them. I could hear them through the building walls, a layered mechanical drone. And beneath that, or maybe woven into it, the other sound, the deep pulse, louder now. Not something I heard with my ears so much as felt in my sternum. I looked at my laptop. The inclinometer now read 4.2 degrees. The crack had widened to 1.3 inches. I looked out the window. In the far corner of the lot, in the closed row, positions 1 through 8, there was a truck. A flatbed, dark in color. No running lights, no DOT markings. A covered load, canvas or tarp, dark, shapeless, tied down with what looked like rope, not modern ratchet straps. The truck was old. The cab was a style I didn't recognize. Something from the 1950s or 1960s, rounded fenders, a split windshield. It was parked in position 4 facing east. It was the only vehicle in the lot facing east. I could not see a driver. The cab was dark. The truck was not idling. Or if it was, its sound was beneath the threshold of the other engines. It simply sat there, aimed at the darkness beyond the fence, like a dog pointing at something in tall grass. I pressed my face to the window. I fogged the glass with my breath and wiped it and pressed again. The truck was real. It occupied space. It cast a shadow under the residual starlight. But it had no license plate. I could see the rear of the flatbed clearly, and where a plate should have been, there was bare metal. I checked my seismograph. The 0.3 Hertz pulse had increased in amplitude by a factor of 6. 2:51. 2 minutes left. I watched the truck. It didn't move. Nothing moved. The 11 modern trucks idled in their row. The old flatbed sat in the closed row. The darkness beyond the fence was absolute. Then I saw the crack. The widest crack. The one I was monitoring. Was directly in my line of sight from the window. My laser meter was still trained on it, and the readout on my laptop said 1.6 inches. But that's not what I mean. I don't mean I saw the measurement change. I mean I saw the crack move. It opened, not like concrete cracking further, like a mouth. The edges of the crack separated laterally, smooth and deliberate, and from inside came a faint amber light. Dim, warm, the color of a sodium lamp, but softer. It spilled out of the crack and pooled on the surface of the concrete like liquid. I stopped breathing. The light pulsed, once every 3 seconds, synchronized with the vibration in my chest. 2:53, the lot lights slammed back on. Sodium vapor, orange, harsh, instant. I blinked against the glare and looked for the flatbed. Position 4 was empty. I looked at my instruments. Inclinometer, 0.0 degrees. Crack width, 0.87 inches. Seismograph, background noise only. Everything was back to where it had been at 5:30 p.m. 6 minutes of anomalous data, wiped clean. Except the data wasn't wiped. My laptop had been logging continuously. I had the readings. I had the timestamps. I checked the log file. The entries between 2:47 and 2:53 were present. But the values recorded were all zeros. Every field, every instrument. 6 minutes of flatline, as if the instruments had been turned off or had measured nothing at all. I know what I saw. The numbers say I didn't. I did not sleep that night. At dawn, I drove to Fort Stockton and ate breakfast at a diner and drank 4 cups of coffee and called Gerald, my supervisor, and told him the cracks were consistent with subsurface void migration, and I recommended a full geotechnical boring program before any repair work. He said, fine, write it up. He'd authorized the contract. I didn't tell him about the binder. I didn't tell him what I saw. Because what would I say? The ground opened up and glowed? An antique truck appeared and disappeared? My instruments recorded the data and then the data deleted itself? I have a professional license. I have a daughter who depends on me. I do not have the luxury of sounding insane. But I didn't leave. I told Gerald I wanted 1 more day to finish the visual survey. He said fine. I drove back to rest area 218. In daylight, I did something methodical. I went through the 3 bankers' boxes from the district office, page by page, looking for anything that connected to the binder's claims. In the second box, filed between a concrete mix certification and a utility locate report, I found a letter. It was handwritten, on personal stationery. Cream-colored paper with the name Mary Alice Hargrove, printed at the top in small serif type. It was addressed to the district engineer, Odessa, and dated August 3rd, 1986. I'm going to reproduce it here as closely as I can from memory and from the photographs I took, because I think it's important. Dear Mr. Castillo, I am writing to confirm that my family is prepared to sell the 4.2-acre strip along the I-10 frontage as discussed. We accept the state's offer and Harold will sign the papers when your man brings them. I want to put in writing what I told you on the telephone because I am old and I want there to be a record in case something happens to me before the construction is finished. The land east of our strip has been wrong since before my family came here, which was 1911. My grandfather homesteaded the sections to the north and west. He never filed on the eastern land, even though it was open and unclaimed and better grass. He told my father it was spoken for, and my father told Harold, and Harold told me, and now I am telling you. It was spoken for before there were people here, not by people. The eastern land pulls things, slowly. It has been pulling our fence posts east by about a foot a year for as long as we have been here. Harold replaces them every spring. His father did the same. We lose about 1 cow a year to it. They go through the fence and they don't come back and we don't find remains. In 1934, my father-in-law drove a truck out onto the eastern land to look for a lost bull. He drove east for 20 minutes, which should have taken him to the ridge and beyond. But when he turned around, he could still see the ranch house at the same distance behind him. He drove back and never went out again. He said the land stretches to keep you. He said it was longer going east than coming west. We don't go out at night. At night, the pulling is stronger. You can feel it in your body, like standing on the edge of a cliff and feeling the urge to jump. Except the cliff is flat ground, and the jump is east. If you are going to build your rest stop, I need you to understand that the building must be between the highway and the eastern land. It must be a barrier. Put the heaviest thing you can on the eastern side. Your truck lot, your concrete, your steel. Give it weight. Give it something to pull that isn't alive. And for the love of God, make sure nobody faces east at night. When you face it, it knows you're looking. When it knows you're looking, it pulls harder. The trucks must face west. Your people must face west. Everyone must look away from it after dark. The land isn't evil. I don't think it knows what evil is. It's something under the land that is hungry in a way that doesn't have anything to do with food. It wants things to come to it. It wants to be full. It has been reaching west for longer than anyone has been here to see it, and it is very, very patient. Please take care. We will not be staying after the sale. Sincerely, Mary Alice Hargrove. I sat in the picnic pavilion with that letter in my hands and the West Texas wind pulling at the pages, and I thought about my mother standing at the kitchen window saying, "There's someone out there who needs to come in." I thought about the cracks all running east to west, the pulling, the stakes migrating through undisturbed soil. I thought about the rest stop's entrance road, the long looping curve that disoriented you so you couldn't tell which direction you were facing when you parked. I'd assumed it was bad design. It wasn't. It was good design. It was designed so that drivers who didn't know the rules would still have a roughly 75% chance of parking facing some direction other than east, just from the spatial confusion. I thought about the sign sizes. Minimum regulation, easy to miss at speed. The rest stop was designed to be underused. Functional enough to justify its budget line. Obscure enough that most drivers would pass it by. I thought about the truck lot. The heaviest thing you can put on the eastern side. A massive concrete pad, steel reinforced, designed to hold 60-ton vehicles. Not to serve the drivers, to weigh down the ground, to hold it in place. The rest stop wasn't a rest stop. It was a cap, a lid, an engineered containment system poured over a geologic appetite, maintained by a binder of rules in a maintenance closet and staffed by people like Felix Munoz who had read the letter and understood. And the cracks meant it was failing. That afternoon, I did the thing I came here to do. I sat on the tailgate of my Subaru and wrote my engineering assessment. But I didn't write the one Gerald expected. I didn't recommend boring. I didn't recommend repair. I wrote a 4-page memo recommending that the truck lot concrete be expanded. An additional 12 inches of reinforced concrete over the existing pad, extending the coverage area 20 feet further east past the current perimeter fence. I recommended the closed parking positions 1 to 8 be permanently barricaded with jersey barriers. I recommended the lighting system be upgraded to a fully redundant array with battery backup and a hardwired manual override inside the maintenance building. And I recommended that the entrance road be extended to add an additional curve, further disorienting approaching drivers. I cited thermal cycling, soil instability, and increased heavy vehicle traffic as justification. Every recommendation was defensible on standard engineering grounds. Nothing in my report referenced the binder, the letter, or anything I'd experienced at night. It was a clean, professional document that happened to describe, in technical language, the reinforcement of a containment system that no one at TxDOT's Austin headquarters would ever recognize as such. I emailed it to Gerald at 4 p.m. He called me at 4:15. Caroline, this is 3 times the budget of a standard resurface. I'm going to need to justify. It's warranted. The subsidence pattern indicates a progressive void system. If we just patch the surface, we'll be back in 2 years doing the whole thing again. The overlay is the cost-effective option long-term. A pause. Gerald is a good engineer. He trusts my work. I'll put it in the queue, probably looking at fall for construction. Gerald, can we expedite? To when? Summer, before the heat. Thermal expansion will accelerate the cracking. This was true. It was also true that summer meant longer days and shorter nights, which meant fewer hours of pulling, which meant the construction crews would be safer. But I didn't say that part. I'll see what I can do. I thanked him. I hung up. I looked at the truck lot. The afternoon sun was casting long shadows from the western light poles across the concrete, and the shadows fell into the cracks and disappeared, and for a disorienting moment the cracks looked deep. Not inches deep, but miles deep. As if the concrete were a thin film stretched over a chasm that went down to somewhere the sun had never reached. I should have driven home. I had my report. I had my recommendation. My job was done. I stayed a third night. I can't fully explain why. Partly it was professional. I wanted more data. Partly it was the same impulse that had made me volunteer for this trip in the first place. A desire to be somewhere that demanded my attention so completely that I couldn't think about my mother's declining mind, or my daughter's wet sheets, or the check engine light, or the child support that might or might not arrive on the 15th. At Rest Area 218, the problem was enormous and clear, and it had nothing to do with my failing domestic life. But mostly, I think, it was the pull. Not the physical sensation, something subtler, a curiosity pull, an itch in the part of my brain that solves problems. The eastern land was a structural question. What was under there? What was causing the lateral force? What was the mechanism? And I am constitutionally incapable of leaving a structural question unanswered. It's why I became an engineer. It's why I'm good at my job. It's also, I am now beginning to understand, exactly the kind of temperament that the eastern land is designed to exploit. Because facing east isn't just about direction, it's about attention. It's about orienting yourself toward it. Mary Alice Hargrove said, "When you face it, it knows you're looking." And I had been looking for 3 days. The third night was different. I set up in the maintenance building again. Trucks arrived. 8 this time, all facing west. The sulfur in the fountain started at 11:30. The deep vibration was present by midnight. Normal, if you can call any of this that. At 2:30, I was at the window, waiting. My instruments were deployed on the lot again, and this time I'd added a camera. A GoPro on a tripod aimed at positions 1 to 8, recording continuously. 2:47, lights out, I watched through the window. The inclinometer on my laptop climbed. 1.0, 2.5, 4.0, 5.8, higher than the previous night. The crack widened past 1.3, past 1.6, past 2.0 inches. The amber light seeped from it again, pooling, pulsing. The flatbed was in position 4 again. Same truck, same covered load, facing east. But tonight, there was something else. In positions 2 and 6, there were vehicles I hadn't seen arrive, not trucks, cars. A sedan in position 2, something domestic, maybe a Ford, light-colored, coated in dust so thick it obscured the paint. An SUV in position 6, an older Chevy Suburban, dark green, also thick with dust, both facing east. Neither had been there when the lights went out. I was sure of this. I had been looking at the lot continuously. I looked at the sedan more carefully. The dust on it was not road dust. It was caliche, the pale calcium carbonate soil of the surrounding desert. It was on the vehicles, but also in them. I could see through the sedan's rear window that the back seat was filled with caliche, level with the bottom of the window, as if the car had been buried and recently unearthed. Or as if it had been sitting on the eastern land for a long time, and the land had been slowly consuming it. The Suburban was the same. Dirt inside to the window line. No plates on either vehicle. I thought of Mary Alice Hargrove. We lose about 1 cow a year. They go through the fence and they don't come back. Not just cows. I looked at the flatbed's covered load with new understanding. The tarp was heavy canvas, dark with age, roped down tight. But in the amber light seeping from the cracks, I could see shapes under it. Not a uniform load, irregular shapes, different sizes, packed tight. The tilt was getting worse. My inclinometer said 7.3 degrees and I could feel it now. Even inside the maintenance building, the floor felt sloped. My coffee mug slid 2 inches toward the east wall, an actual physical object responding to a tilt that surveying equipment said did not exist. Then the flatbed's engine started. It was not a diesel sound. It was deeper and more organic than any engine I've heard. A low resonant tone that I felt in my teeth and my spine and the soles of my feet. The covered load shifted slightly, settling, as if whatever was under the tarp had just relaxed. The truck began to move. It rolled forward, east, toward the perimeter fence. Slowly, 5 miles an hour, maybe less. It reached the fence and didn't stop. The chain link parted around the truck's bumper like tissue paper, folding back without breaking, opening a gap just wide enough for the vehicle to pass through. The flatbed drove east, into the dark, toward the ridge that was invisible at night. And as it moved, the sedan and the Suburban followed, not under their own power. They were being pulled, sliding across the concrete, tires locked, scraping east, dragged toward the gap in the fence like debris caught in a current. I pressed my face to the window and watched them go. The flatbed's single working taillight, a dim red point, receded into the darkness. The sedan and Suburban followed, scraping, grinding. The amber light from the cracks intensified, brightened, and for just a moment the entire eastern expanse beyond the fence was illuminated, and I saw the ridgeline, closer than 1.2 miles. Much closer, maybe 300 yards. And on the ridgeline, silhouetted against the amber glow, were vehicles. Dozens of them. Cars, trucks, tractors, wagons. Shapes I couldn't identify. All facing east, all still, lined up along the ridge like the teeth of a jaw. The light faded. The darkness was absolute. I heard the scraping stop. 2:53. The lot lights came back. The fence was intact. Positions 1 through 8 were empty. My instruments read 0 across the board. The GoPro, when I checked it later, showed 6 minutes of black, not darkness, but the flat black of a camera that has stopped recording and replaced its buffer with nothing. but the gap was still there. Not in the fence, in me. Something had opened when I saw the ridgeline, some channel of attention between myself and the eastern land. And I could feel it the way you feel an open window in a house. A draft, a directional flow, a sense that air is moving from here to there and you are standing in the current. When it knows you're looking, it pulls harder. I was looking, and I couldn't stop. I packed my instruments at dawn. I loaded the banker's boxes into my car. I sat in the driver's seat and programmed my GPS for Pflugerville. I didn't start the engine. I was thinking about the cracks, about the concrete, about my report already in Gerald's inbox, recommending more weight, more concrete, more reinforcement. I was thinking about what Mary Alice Hargrove had said. Give it something to pull that isn't alive. But the concrete wasn't holding. The cracks were widening. The yearly measurements. I'd found them in the binder, a log going back to 1987. One measurement per year, always taken at noon on the summer solstice. Showed the widest crack progressing from 0.1 inches in 1988 to 0.87 inches in 2025. A consistent, linear increase. At that rate, the cracks would exceed the structural capacity of the pad within 5 to 7 years. The concrete would break apart, the cap would fail, and the pulling would reach the highway. I thought about the vehicles on the ridgeline, dozens of them, accumulated over decades, maybe longer. Things that had been pulled east and never came back. Right now, the pull was local, limited to the rest stop, the fence line, a few hundred yards of dead land. But the pull was growing. The cracks proved it. Every year the reach extended. Every year the appetite widened. My overlay would buy time. A decade maybe if the progression stayed linear. But it wouldn't solve anything. You can't engineer your way out of something that doesn't obey physics. You can only add weight and hope. I started the engine. I drove east. Not home. East. Toward the fence. I don't know why. I know that sounds like a lie, or like the beginning of a story about a woman losing her mind in the desert. But I genuinely do not know what I thought I was going to accomplish. Maybe I thought that if I could see the ridgeline in daylight, measure the distance, confirm the number and type of vehicles, if I could quantify it, then I could manage it, contain it, reduce it to data points and engineering responses. That's what I do. That's who I am. I drove across the truck lot. The concrete cracks thumped under my tires like railroad tracks. I reached the perimeter fence and stopped. In daylight, the fence was intact. No gap. The chain link was continuous, the barbed wire unbroken. But the survey stakes were further east than yesterday. I could see it without measuring. 15 inches past the fence line now. In 24 hours, they'd moved 3 or 4 inches. Beyond the fence, the land looked normal. Scrub, caliche, creosote. The ridge was where it should be. Distant, low, unremarkable. No vehicles. But the pull was there. Even at noon, even in bright sun, I could feel it. Not physical, attentional. My eyes wanted to look east. My mind wanted to think about what was under the ridge, under the soil, under the bedrock. I wanted to know. The wanting was intense and pleasurable and completely inappropriate, like craving sugar when you're diabetic. I sat in my car at the fence line for 11 minutes. I know because I checked the clock when I finally turned around, and 11 minutes had passed that felt like 90 seconds. I drove back to the truck lot. I drove to the south parking area. I parked facing west. I sat there with my hands on the steering wheel and breathed until the wanting diminished to a manageable ache. Then I drove home. That was 3 weeks ago. I am in my house in Pflugerville. My daughter is at school. My mother is in the living room watching a show she won't remember. The check engine light is still on. The child support didn't come this month. I have not told anyone about what I experienced at Rest Area 218. My report is in the system. Gerald approved the overlay project and it's scheduled for July. A construction crew will go out there and pour 12 additional inches of concrete over the truck lot and extend it 20 feet east, past the fence line, into the land that belongs to no one. They will work during the day and leave before dark because that's standard procedure for remote sites. They won't know why they're really there. They'll think it's a road maintenance project. I have done what I can. But I need to tell you two things before I stop writing. The first is that the measurements I took, the inclinometer readings, the crack widths, the seismograph data, were, as I said, all zeros in my log files. Every instrument showed nothing for the 247 to 253 window on both nights. I accepted this. I cataloged it as an anomaly. Then, last Tuesday, I was reviewing the files on my laptop at home, and I found a folder I didn't create. It was nested inside my project directory for Rest Area 218 in a subfolder called East. Inside were my readings, the real ones, the inclinometer progression, the crack widths, the seismograph amplitudes, the 0.3 Hertz pulse, recorded clearly, 6 minutes of rhythmic, low-frequency vibration that a geologist friend later told me, off the record, doesn't match any known tectonic or industrial source. The data was time-stamped correctly. The file creation dates were the nights I was on site. But I didn't save these files. I didn't create that folder. The data had been moved there by something that had access to my computer and wanted me to have the evidence. It wanted me to keep looking. The second thing is harder to explain. Since I came home, I've been sleeping badly. I wake at 2:47 every night, not approximately. Exactly. I lie in bed and feel the house tilt east. It doesn't. I know it doesn't. But I feel it, the way you feel a phantom limb. The eastern wall of my bedroom is closer than it used to be. I've measured it, and the measurement is the same, but I don't believe the measurement. My body knows the wall is closer. And in the mornings, when I walk my daughter to the bus stop, I find myself looking east down the street, staring, the way my mother stares at the window, looking for something that wants to come in, or something that wants me to come out. I catch myself and look away. Every time, I look west, toward the school, toward my daughter's face, toward the present tense of my life. I look away, but the pull is stronger in the mornings now. And it's stronger than it was last week. And I have started, without deciding to, driving east on my way to work instead of south, adding 15 minutes to my commute for no reason I can articulate. I have started reading about the geology of the Permian Basin at night on my phone. I have started looking at the TxDOT real-time traffic cameras for the I-10 corridor, specifically the one nearest mile marker 218. Watching the trucks go by, counting the ones that take the exit. I understand, as an engineer, what is happening. The system is designed to pull things east. I went there. I looked. I opened a channel, and now the pull is operating on me at a distance of 300 miles. The same way it operates on survey stakes and fence posts and cattle and cars. Slowly, incrementally, through the ground, through the bedrock, through whatever medium connects the eastern land to the rest of the world. I'm going to fight it. I have a daughter. I have a mother who needs me. I have a life that is hard and imperfect and real and mine, and I'm not going to let it pull me back. But I want you to know, in case I don't succeed, that the overlay project is scheduled for July. If I'm not there to oversee it, someone else will be. The construction documents are in the system. The work will get done. The cap will be reinforced. It will hold for another decade, maybe longer. And someone will need to update the binder. I've drafted a new Rule 12 on a piece of paper that I'm going to mail to Felix Munoz at the Odessa District Office this week. 12. Engineers and surveyors assigned to this facility should conduct all assessment work during daylight hours and should not remain on site past sunset. No monitoring equipment should be deployed during the 2:47 to 2:53 window. Measurement data collected during overnight stays may be unreliable and may create a persistent sense of professional obligation to return. This sense is not professional obligation. Restrict site visits to a single day. Do not volunteer for follow-up assessments. I don't know if Felix will add it to the binder. I don't know if the next person will read it. I don't know if reading it would have stopped me, because the truth is that I didn't violate the rules. I read them and I followed them. I stayed inside during the dark window. I didn't approach the trucks. I didn't cross the fence. I did everything right.
The rules weren't wrong. They just weren't written for someone who wants to understand. They were written for maintenance workers, people who would follow instructions and not ask why. They weren't written for someone whose entire identity is built on figuring out how things work. The rules protected me from the obvious dangers. They didn't protect me from myself. There's a rest stop in West Texas where truckers never park facing east. Now you know why. And now you know the thing that Mary Alice Hargrove and Felix Munoz and 11 truck drivers on a Tuesday night all understood, and that I understood too late. The most dangerous thing you can do at mile marker 218 isn't breaking the rules. It's looking east and wanting to know what's there. Because once you want to know, it knows you want to know. And it is very, very patient. If you drive I-10 between Fort Stockton and Van Horn, you'll pass mile marker 218. The rest stop sign is small. You'll probably miss it. That's the idea. But if you do stop, if you pull in to stretch your legs or use the restroom or walk your dog, park on the south side. Face your car west, use the facilities and leave. Don't walk to the truck lot. Don't look at the cracks. Don't look east. And if you feel a pull, a gentle, pleasant tug of curiosity, a whisper that says there's something interesting just past the fence, just over the ridge, just a little further. That's not curiosity. That's the reach. It's longer than it used to be, and it's getting longer every year.